and it is morning. I am not yet switched over to work mode. I have gone through the morning practice, and immediately after that meditation, I started to think about some ideas related to music and music and meditation and music. Just something that I made an offhand comment in the last podcast episode about meditation notes, and I got a couple of questions, and I thought what I would do is talk through that a bit more. And in fact, what I'm going to do is take a couple of paragraphs from my book and read that, because it kind of summarizes what I think about when I mean music and meditation. So before I do that, thank you to everybody who has had questions and sent notes. It's very exciting to get comments and feedback, and thank you to everybody who's been sharing the episodes. I have noticed a definite uptick in the number of listeners, and that is also very exciting. So keep up the good work, everybody. So music and meditation, or meditation and music. What it is not, what I'm not going to talk about today, a couple of things that are tools in the practice that use sound, but that is not what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm not going to talk about practice like striking a bell or a singing bowl and then absorbing yourself in the sound, following the sound as it unfolds, changes, sustains itself, and then gradually diminishes. And as you follow that sound over multiple strikes, that tail end of the final diminuendo, where the sound of the bell merges into the sound of the room, the distinction between the sound that you're following and the sound that is around you, the sound that you are immersed in, that line becomes very fragile, very liminal. And following that sound, paying attention to that sound, perhaps with your breath following it, is a way that you can train the mind to pay attention, and to pay attention to increasingly refined senses. That's not what I'm talking about today for music and meditation. I'm also not talking about chanting, whether it's chanting a syllable like om or ah, and holding that for a full exhalation of the breath, watching the breath, absorbing in the sound, the mind connected to the sound that you are producing, the meditative absorption that comes with producing the sound, listening to the sound, being aware of that feedback loop, that the listener and the producer are the same. And where is that line? It's a great practice, but not what I'm talking about today. And then related to that is actually chanting, where there may be a visualization associated with the chant, or a teaching. You know, we often chant sutras, and it serves two purposes. It teaches because there is text that we can contemplate and consider while we're sitting and chanting, and there is sound that we are producing. So it can be an object of meditation, concentration, but also of study and learning, teaching. It's absorption in the Dharma as well as the phenomenon of the sound. So again, neither the sound of the bell, nor the sound of the om, nor the sound of the chant. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about music and meditation. Or not prayer either, which can be chanted or spoken or silent. Prayer is interesting, right? Prayer is different from meditation or from chanting. There's an overlap, but it's in my mind, prayer is a listening in a way that chanting, for me is transformation, and prayer for me is dedication and listening. That's a distinction I find useful. But like with a lot of these things, your mileage will vary, and you may have a completely different terminology or glossary of terms that you use to describe these phenomena. But, in the interest of moving forward, we choose a taxonomy and we stick with it. So what am I talking about then? Well, like I said, I'm going to read a section from my book where I talk about the experience of listening to music and what that entails for me, and what it might prompt in you. Like, how do you listen to music? There's a state, there's a stance, right? That's a positioning of the self to experience a piece of music. And a piece of music is something that starts, something happens, and then it ends. And depending on the music, we can trick ourselves into thinking that the music is a narrative or is non-narrative. The music I'm thinking of here in particular is Messiaen, and I talk about Messiaen in the book. Messiaen's music is not narrative. It's gestural, and it's rhetorical, but it's often these enormous patterns that are unfolding, and unfolding against each other, and we're given a snapshot of a cycle that could be 27,000 years long, and we're hearing a 3-minute snapshot of it. So music within that structure can have many different content, but the structure is always music starts, something happens, something ends. Sound starts, happens, and ends. And then so does the human being. Right? We start, we're born, something happens, we live, we experience desire, we experience disappointment, we experience illness, and eventually we experience the cessation of our current incarnation. And we die. We experience the death state. So is it possible to, as we are enjoying music and the enjoyment and the pleasure of the sound and of the music and of all of the images and memories and fantasies that come along with that, it's beautiful and wonderful. But the nature of the phenomenon, as the nature of all phenomenon, is this object that arises, sustains, and then ceases. Within the piece of music, there are granules that do the same thing, individual notes, individual phrases. Just as within our own life, we have the framework of our physical birth, sustenance, and death, but then at any given moment we have emotions that arise, or experiences and other phenomena that arise, sustain, and then cease. And those may be momentary, they may last 2 minutes, they may last 20 years, they may seem to last forever. So here we go. I'm just going to jump right in. And in the book, I'm talking about Messiaen and synesthesia. But here I'm talking more generally about the music itself. When I listen to Messiaen's music, or when I try to play through some of his piano music, what strikes me is the physical shape of it all. I think of sound as a gesture, and I like to use the word kinesthetic instead of synesthesia. I don't mean sound as a gesture like choreography, but instead as a haptic sense, where there is a recollection of particular gestures required to perform a task. You can speak about the haptics of playing piano, running a marathon, or operating a radio telescope. Messiaen's music suggests new haptics that are unfamiliar even before it reaches the idea of sound. I feel my body moving without moving, if that makes any sense. Motionless twitch. If I am listening to a new piece of music for the first time, then I am learning new devices for motion in sequence, the measure of which is the success of the piece. Likewise, if I am writing a new piece, then it first takes shape as small twitches in my arms, assaying a space between the muscles, and that space is the sound itself. I can't say that a sound has a particular color, but a sound suggests a particular shape, and a particular gesture brings to mind a state of mind that can partly be classified by a color. That's as much sense as any. So, green, the color of death, the haptics of mortality. One morning in late winter, I was walking to the office. I had been running on a treadmill in the gym, and my legs felt supple and strong. I'd woken early that morning and drunk a cup of tea upstairs in my studio, cross-legged, in meditation and study. I had taken the dogs for their expected walk, been at the bus stop on time, and was now drinking hot coffee, listening to Messiaen on headsets attached to a portable device that reproduces recordings of music. An astonishing device. If you ever visit Pittsburgh, you will see against the skyline the glass cathedral building that is headquarters for the Pittsburgh Plate and Glass Company. It is a four-quartered castle with spires of glass. Every season is thus reflected on the walls. Where my desk was in this office, I could look out of the window and see the river in the glass, but only when the sun was at a singular angle in the sky, a particular time of day in a particular season. I only worked there for 2 of those seasons, but saw my own henge alignment. This one morning, the building meets a dark sky. The blurry edge of Christmas holiday decorations blends with the music in my headsets, and I feel as if I am expanding into that big dark space above, that I am suspended on my back with my limbs extended out until they vanish in a million tiny nerves and synapses. Filaments, each pulsing with a sound that etches the sky with electric green. The office moves towards me, as much a part of everything as my breath, the liquid in my hand, the piano in my ears. A mobile of patterns, the sense of which, that once started, it would take eternity to return back to the starting point. I think that's probably a lot like what it feels like to be dead. Green and groovy. So that excerpt is from my book On Mortality and the Human Imagination, which is available on Amazon if you're interested in picking up a copy. You can also go to zenglob.net/publications. And there's a couple more examples on the page there. So check it out if you're interested. And as always, drop me a note. Zenglob at zenglob.net, and keep your wits about you. Talk to you soon.